Hello, friends. I feel like we gotta talk about it. We are gonna watch Salvdali's point of view here of his raid day with 5 Sunders Please on their next follow-up DMF week. We just previously did a review of their #1 raid, and I think it's important to see both the good and the bad, and a couple lessons just to talk about that can be learned. So let's get into it. And before we get into it, let's just listen for a minute here as far as the setup for this raid and kind of maybe not expectations, but like, you know, omens, I guess, right? Like, we'll just listen.
Okay, by the way, speaking of AQ40 speedrunning, yes, we did some fishing before the raid. We were like the entire week, like the past like 5 days, we've been holding an ID that has 4 Mindslayers and 1 Lasher, which is fine. It's not amazing, but it's fine. And we were assuming like, okay, we're gonna just go with that ID and call that good enough. And then, like, 15 minutes before we were supposed to start the raid, Frelzer said he was doing some last minute he was doing some like last minute stuff, right? He was doing some last minute scouting. And we see him say all of a sudden, holy shit, I found a 32 Slayer ID. And we're like, you're joking, right? He's like, no, I really did. And so he turns on his Discord stream and we see like, yeah, lo and behold, he's found a 32 Slayer ID. And so we're of course the first question after that is like, well, how many Lashers, right? And he's like, well, I haven't checked yet. Okay, let's check. And I was like, oh, I got a bad feeling about this. So we mind visions Sartura, mind visions over to the pre-Who Run stuff, and lo and behold, we find 0 Lashers. So we all kind of collectively freaked out in Discord because we found, for what I've seen at least, for a speedrun, for the first time ever, a perfect ID. 0 Mind Slayers, 0 Lashers. Evidently, Return, like the guild Return, also found a 0-0 ID, like at the same time as us, basically. So I do wonder almost like the ID you get is like tied to like when you zone in or something. I have no idea, but regardless,
So
yeah,
yeah,
literally the
let's talk about that. Not only was there two, apparently there was two more. So I put that into ChatGPT. Maybe my wording is kind of silly. I'm just going to copy and paste this response as the description for this video if you want to see just absolute it just goes and goes and goes and goes as far as like thoughts. But yeah, it seems like infinite odds as far as O's chances of this happening where there's multiple 0 IDs happening. Just to explain that a little more here, at the end, after Twin Imps, there is packs that you kill that can have Mind Slayers or they cannot. And each time you create a new instance, there's a chance that you get more or less. So we've talked about that previously. Check out our farming the instance or fishing is really what it's called, right? The fishing for AQ40 video. Shout out to Drast for explaining that also. Shout out to Silly for the chart as far as like rarity, right? Where it's like 1 in a million or something like that. And then to have the additional chances of 0 Lashers, where there's like 6 potential Lashers or whatever. Just very, very crazy odds to have 2 of those IDs happen. And again, allegedly there were 2 more, maybe on NA as well. So feel free to share if you know anything about that. But yeah, I mean, with that many happening at the same time, it like must be tied to um, some time of day or something. That's a really interesting development, or just extremely, extremely weird random occurrence. So just to go off that, right? Like this is the best chance that there has ever been for a good AQ40 raid when it comes to the potential, right? This is the perfect gigapole potential. Before we get into that, we're going to watch a practice run. So I think it's interesting to watch how they set up for this. So watch what happens here. They're going to all use an Invispot. This is Invispot tech. So there is now confirmed Invispot tech for AQ40. We didn't really get to see the setup for this before. So one person brings them all out. Rip Amy. Oh, Amy was on Hunter. Okay. So then they like run back out, I guess. I don't know, kind of weird call. Then they all die. So yeah, kind of funny. Let's just see the wind up again here. When you're running in and out, it gets weird of like trying to farm instances and stuff. Okay, so they just get kind of bowed on. So anyways, I'm just kind of rambling at this point, but this is what I wanted to show. Invispot run up. So that right there, with that little bit of scuff, that's some scuff to start the raid. When you have a warm-up raid, it's always nice to get the scuff out. So that's the idea here, but you just Invispot run over and this is a safe spot. Apparently they can like still potentially hit some people. There's been some little weird things that I've seen where it doesn't like reset super well, so you do got to be a little bit careful there. But that's kind of like the new setup spot, and it's not, you saw, it's not a super big pain to set that up. So let's just continue forward here, and now we'll just talk about as the run starts. Um, First pull, they're not going quite as aggressive as far as pulling both of the packs at the same time. That was just a little bit too much. I do think ideally, like, they do pull that top pack, though. I guess it's just kind of awkward, but they like have to walk backwards a little bit here to start pulling these next mobs, right? It's just a little bit weird and still doesn't feel super comfortable. But now you're going to see a little bit of unfortunateness here where the second pack comes on in and they need tanks to pick stuff up and rip lost buffs. So you see it like the last possible second here. There's going to be a mortal strike that happens on Dolly. The big take, it was super hard to see the debuff, but really quick death, 100 to 0 fast. I don't blame him for that. Just needs to have a weak war in general to see like the different abilities, so you're a little bit more aware of that. But in general, the big takeaway is disarm. These mobs can be disarmed, and if there's ever one that does have mortal strike, you just need to disarm it. It's that simple. The fact that those mobs can be disarmed is one of those warrior things that's not really talked about, and yeah, it needs to be more because it's just really, really powerful. So other than there, not too much to mention with this run. This is just the lead up run. We'll see a little bit of Pega pull here that happens. So just a lot of the guardians in the hallway here. This is the power of snowballs. Raids getting more used to snowballs in AQ40 is something that is just incredibly powerful. So they go into the corner here. People just aren't super healthy in multiple groups. It's interesting to me that they have multiple priests. I guess they have the SEAL Team 6, right? That's why. So they just have less support here, and then the boss gets pulled. So this gets scuffy here. Very, very scuffy. The boss does get reset, question mark? No, it's just not getting reset. They're just having very, very big issues here. I didn't really watch this part properly, to be honest. So, scuff rate at this point, right? Looks like that one priest dies, two priests die. So half successful pull, they do pull off the skip, or giga pull, I should say, but two priests die on that attempt when they're doing it. So definitely not perfect by any means. Both the bug trio and the pull gets messed up. Not a whole ton more to talk about at this point that I really want to talk about because I want to get into the actual speed run, but we'll just talk about their wipe here in a minute. Pulling multiple packs at once is just very, very dangerous. It's something that groups are almost doing quite cavalier at this point with the level of raid gear, with so many people having rank 14, all the buff cap, that kind of stuff, right? But when buffs get lost and you don't kill things quite as fast, you definitely feel it. And that's what you're going to see coming up here. The big thing to start is this dust cloud. So when dust cloud happens, you have a lot less melee DPS output. Everyone's going to get hit here, and it's going to get really rough. One more thing I did want to talk about. Let's go back to Twin Imps after the wipe. So we'll watch the wipe here. Another pack comes in. They have multiple Mindslayers that are mind controlling people. And now it's just going to get really, really hairy where there's not a whole ton of room here for the raid. Having casters safely away from people makes a huge difference. Everyone's just kind of stuck right here where they're silenced combined with, actually it doesn't look like too many silences are going out from what I can tell. Maybe I can't see all the debuffs fully here. I would kind of assume some silences are happening on healers. Okay, no, it didn't look like it actually, because I see the silence debuff now. So, anyways, yeah, it just falls apart. Not a whole ton to say here as far as like what could happen that would have super saved the raid. Dummies are just super powerful. Trying to bring the Mindslayers away, having a couple different warriors on the ads so that you're able to get different threat when one person gets mind controlled than someone else that's a warrior still has threat on them. But yeah, just kind of have to blast down some of those slayers, and at this point, it's out of control. Just a lot of ads still alive. So GG's. A little bit of a rough starter run, right? They do pull off some of the different tech, and it was good practice in that way. But now let's get into the next run. Again, the biggest thing that I'll say is if you know that it's Mortal Strike, make sure that you are disarming as the tank if you're on those. And then I would recommend having a backup tank. So now this is the real speed run. You see additional consumes being popped. They have the armor debuff that you can't even see because it's over 32 debuffs at this point. And again, this is the Giga insane ID that's never been had before. So you're hoping for a really good start here. Notice again, Deathwish is just going to run out here as multiple ads are still alive. The goal and dream is that Deathwish lasts for the whole time while these two packs are dying. So it's something that's still, I feel like, getting figured out a little bit and has more potential because I really do believe that it is possible. So Dolly talked about the Sheen debuff, where it can be valuable to have that pre-popped before you pop other Zanzas. That way, if you get a mind control, the first one will not affect you. So that is kind of giga powerful. If that's the case, which I think it is. So that to me is some big brain tech. So I want to talk about this pull here. It got a little weird. Um, People body pulled and the pack got pulled back compared to their used to pulling it up front. So lots of knockbacks happen. But again, I think a big difference between Eternal, of why Eternal is doing so well in this area, is their use of snowballs. It really is just that powerful and makes a big, big difference. So lots less knockback damage. Whenever people get knocked into that other pack, um, this time that area just didn't go as well. And as we're watching this fight here, again, Kree on the last two pulls gets a heal off. So this is just like half a second lost right here, maybe like a quarter second. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but yeah, I was just consistently healing Kree on the first time. So definitely area of improvement. But they're blasting it down, finishing the last little bit. You notice here though, watch one priest dies, and another priest is gonna die. Third priest dies. So Puai we watched last time, that point of view, very, very strong DPS to be able to finish off all the ads with priests. Just using all the different um, mana abilities really well. Smokes almost dies and then dies. So the key there was that Smokes lived for quite a long period of time, all things considered, after all the priests had already died. So that definitely made a huge difference. Looks like Petri goes ahead and uses Lay here in a second. Lay on Myosin maybe. Um, Moving forward. So the pull did fail that four of them died, the mage, three priests, but they actually did miraculously finish it off, where it's just the warrior tank and then one pally being able to keep the warrior alive, even though that the pally has like zero mana for a super long period of time. So that just shows how powerful one warrior can be to just stay alive. So scuffed pull at this point. I feel like the setup for these guys is often not super great with how they're stacked together. They just want to wait like half a second longer for them to all be stacked. They're just doing it a little weird consistently. Again, compared to Eternal, you just notice faster and cleaner. So rip, mage dies again, too close. And yeah, case of where people are starting to be afraid of dying, so then they move out and lose uptime. Whereas if you notice, Dolly is just like hard staying on and finishing off the boss, and ready to whip when it's the end and whipper and stuff. So I feel like you do need to just have an aggressive raid on that comp. But again, at this point, people are already starting to think, oh, it's a scuffed run, things are over. You can tell the vibe does shift a little bit when more and more people are dying, and it's getting weird. So they pull those scorpions. Again, I always talk about how I feel like that could be an area of improvement. I feel like when I looked at the logs in retrospect for some of these number one runs, there was some warriors that didn't have frost weapons on. So it will be interesting to go back here. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into logs at the end here, but we're watching the promised Giga Skip here. This is the dream. Shout out to the Rogue for pulling it off, Santa Q. Santa QT, I should say. Mayo almost dies here. Again, if you are not using a free action potion, I see warriors getting 3 of the poisons here. They definitely want to have a free action potion on or Blessing of Freedom. One of the two. Blessing of Freedom is really OP. So they drag Hoo Hoo. That's clean. They have people drop from the raid when poison happens. I think that there was confirmed meteors here. I just did a little audit as far as like who took damage from fire, right? Sorry for the blinding light, but I feel like that there were people that did not have shadow pot a fire pot pre-popped. I didn't look into shadow or some of the other nature arcane yada yada, but I think it is important in the number one run in the world for when you're going for that to have those kind of potions pre-popped. When people do get that number one, complacency does immediately start, I think. So they blast on the opener here. They're moving forward. I mean, they're still at Twin Emps at 17 minutes into the raid. They're blasting, so it's good practice here. This pull gets really, really scary, though. So they start with 1, or they start with 2 basically right away. Ideally, you just have them staggered a little bit. When you have them so close together like this, it makes it a lot tougher. You want to be able to kill at least half a pack. They kill one single mob when the next mob is already, or the next pack is already coming in. So they do manage to finish off a second and a third. So now it's safer-ish. But wait, it's not, because it's a double pull. They have 3 champions in here right now, and 8 lashers all on top of each other. 8 lashers like this is just wild. I feel like you're just forced to split them up a little bit more. Salvdali does a really good shield wall here to stay alive and putting on shield and that kind of stuff. Um, Taking multiple ads upcoming here. And that's what you just got to do when it gets to be a scuffed pull like this. So props for not dying and understanding how to not die. Ideally, you definitely want to be saving rec for Cthulhu, but at this point, this is a total bricked run, right? Like you're just trying to not die and wipe. So doing the best you can. I thought he had really good usage in general of his Zerker Rage. If you notice here, there's a lot of times where warriors are getting caught in fears, and that's just kind of strange to me because like this is the first pack, right? Like why are warriors getting feared for periods of time, like long periods of time, if you notice? And like the rogue should have a fear word going into the first pack. In general, I feel like fear words are kind of lacking, right? Like this is an alliance raid and they have no debuff cap. That was like not really a buff that was talked about in the last video that I did, but Fear Word is just one of those things that is incredibly powerful on Alliance side, and you need to start calling it out earlier on in this area to make sure that everyone has one, because the fears, they were really disruptive. So, yeah, fact that they didn't wipe, that was really great, but run is definitely borked, but they're continuing forward here. Not really a ton more to say, scuffed run, but they hold it together and they managed to finish it out. So whoop-de-woo. Not a whole ton more to say, but again, I feel like Traeger, especially in long downtimes like this, if you are waiting for Cthulhu to happen for more than 5 seconds, why does the main tank not have a shield on him? You definitely, priests, wake up, put a priest shield. Maybe that's the call so that he gets rage. Um, but I feel like you should just be able to have other forms of getting rage. You want to have a pre-shield at the start of this. You see how he just always gets low? And he died last week to 200 overkill. But again, could have used a Hellstone last week, so maybe just needs to be ready to Hellstone Whipper. Not a whole ton more to say. Kind of scuffed kill, but they do manage to finish the raid. The timer was stopped at this point, but like a 30-minute run, right? Like it's funny how we're like, oh, it's super scuffed raid. Like this is still an insanely good AQ40 by most people's standards. Obviously for the #1 guild, not the case, but as we talked about before, I think that there is still some pretty big low-hanging fruit. So let's just look at a couple more things in the logs. The first thing that I want to go to is the alt raid. And it just surprised me. We're going to look at damage taken and go to bubble skip. Then we'll go to bubble skip's gear. And just no enchants. So if there was some basic enchants, things would have been okay. On the chest piece, helm, legs, boots, bracers. Does have cloak enchant. Shield, like this shield is rank 14, right? Or the immovable object, whatever it is like, that's a shield you've had for a long time, I would think. Definitely want to make sure these different items are enchanted with basic enchants for speedruns that are trying to do these sort of things, because again, we're just going to look at damage taken now, events, and it was just some shadow bolts that resulted in 200 overkill. So healing, making sure to have shadow pots are important. Um, yeah, just one of those things. Kind of surprises me. So then let's look in the next one, see how that paladin compares. It does have helm enchant. So this one's more enchanted, missing uh, leg enchant. Definitely can get something on legs. I'm not sure at this point if there's shadow guard. Again, I'm showing my ignorance here with the um, 10 shadow resistance. I think that's in the game, right? Or is that next phase? Sorry, I'm flashbanging. Anyways, just missing one enchant, so not as bad. But again, if it's like trying to be #1 run, definitely want to get basic enchants. Also some enchant on glove, either the threat enchant. I don't know if that's really good for the blessing spam. Let me know, paladins, if you'd rather have the healing enchant on this so you have a little bit more healing, or since it's shadow resistance and you're only using on this, is it technically better to have the plus threat? Curious your thoughts on that. Not a whole ton more. Like I said, I think it's interesting to look at like healing by ability. Arcane pot. So it seems like basically everyone's using it. Again, I'm not gonna audit these things fully. I could copy and paste and show some of these things, but um, yeah, I just feel like some people may have not been using fire pots or like shadow pots. Making sure that everyone has the different stuff and the #1 runs do matter. Very surprised by how low whippers. Like very, very low whippers to me. That is probably my biggest surprise. I would expect more people to be using defensives at different times. So interesting to see kind of like what I think is more ability to play for your life. As far as deflask goes, a lot of people are using it. Not a whole ton of people are getting a ton of healing out of it yet. So much more potential here for people to start getting more flash sets and passive healing from it. Maybe it's not everything, but it's something. It does add up. So the more people that have that, it's just free healing. Right now it's 65k. It can get considerably more than that, especially going into Nax. It's going to be more relevant. Uh, kind of it for now. A little tired talking, but yeah, just interesting things. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about more in the future. Love doing these kind of videos. Love some of the responses that I'm getting. So, till next time, thanks, guys.